Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us right before lunch. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rasha Aude. I lead Insights at Rise Studios. And at Rise, our mission is to champion a regional talent, Arab talent, and tell stories differently. And a part of telling stories differently is we like to keep in touch with what the audiences are watching, what the audiences are demanding, and this is where our partnership with Parrot Analytics takes place. So just to start off to why we're here a year later. So last year we discussed the rise of Arab talent, the Arab stories, and how Arab stories are traveling abroad and what the potential of Arabic stories are. So this year we want to understand what's next. So we came up with a question, a hypothesis that we challenged Parrot Analytics to answer for us. So what I like at Rise is everything we do, if we have a story, if we have an idea, everything we do is with intent. We try to think about it, we brainstorm together and think of new ideas, what's next. So we were talking about that we're living in kind of a global uncertainty, and I think everyone can agree, with everything that's happening in the region and worldwide. We were wondering, do the audiences want to feel something else? Do they want to feel uplift, hope, humanity? Is that something that people are demanding? We wanted to look beyond what they're watching, but why they're watching. Like, what are the emotional need states behind what they're watching? Is it a feeling that they want to have? And because of everything that's happening worldwide, we wanted to understand, is feel good, that hope, that emotional payoff, something that people want to see, or do they want to feel depressed or anxious? So that was the question that we posed to Parrot Analytics. And this is where the collaboration came place. Now, Ahmed is going to explain to you how they do all what they do, but what we were able to look at together is look at their audience intelligence data and ask together. It was about revealing the reality of audience emotion and demand. So it's not just what they're watching, but what they're choosing to feel when they watch what they watch. So I'm going to leave it to Amit, where he explains the genius behind what they do and take you and revisit what we discussed last year.
Thank you, Rasha, and great to see you all again a year later. I think this is our third installment, and every time we do one of these joint white papers, we uncover some fascinating insight. So for those of you who don't know Parrot, we're a data science company, and I just wanted to give a quick introduction into our proprietary metric, which we call demand, if you don't know too much about it. But the premise has been built on the attention economy, and we didn't develop this thesis. It came out of Harvard many decades ago, but we built our metric on it. And what the attention economy states is that time is now the most valuable resource. We have a finite amount of time, and there's an opportunity cost in what happens in how you spend that time. Now, if I go back 25, 30 years ago, I grew up in a household where there was a shared living room and a single TV set with 3, then 4, then 5 channels to choose from. And that was it. I didn't have a choice. I came downstairs and I had to watch whatever my parents were watching. In this day and age, that choice is very, very different. So our children are now faced with this. And when you translate the attention economy to media entertainment, this is essentially what happens in your path to choose what to watch on television. Now, Netflix, in the top, all they really care about is you heading to their platform, you browsing, and you click and play. And that's how they monetize their content. But the user journey and the platform proliferation and the fragmentation is much more different than 25 to 30 years ago. So our aim is to capture all of the digital touch points across the entire ecosystem and the attention economy. So whether it be searching, social media, downloading and streaming. We essentially measure 2 billion audiences, and we help to quantify the value of content, talent, sports, and IP globally. And we've created the only global measure and currency of the attention economy across all platforms, across all languages, and in all markets. Now, with regards to what we've done in Hollywood, we're behind some of the biggest hits, which we've been supporting along the entire life cycle. So not just from the development standpoint, but from distribution and monetization. And with regards to production, that's why we work with Rise on the wonderful slate, and really to help them to understand what it is that consumers are demanding in terms of attention. And when we look at the entire ecosystem, our metric was born out of the TV and film space, but we recently and very quickly uncovered that it's not linear anymore. And talk about attention, our attention can come in many shapes and forms, and whether it would be reading a book or following your favorite talent on social media or playing a football game or listening to music or podcasts and sports and brands. This is what my day job looked like. So I try to make sense of this chart every single day and all the digital touch points along the entire ecosystem. Okay, so that's demand. And I'll take you back to a few charts from last year's presentation. And we've updated some of the data points. We're going to start to revisit some of the regional demand. When we talk about demand in the MENA market and the region in aggregate in its entirety, go back to 2020, we saw over 76% of local MENA demand driven by English language content. So it's just over 3/4. It's huge. Step into this year, and we start to build what today's story looks like. So the grey segment of this chart is looking at all content outside of Arabic language and English content. And that's slightly increased over the 5-year period from 20% to 23%. But what's fascinating is when you zoom in on English content demand, that's reduced by 25 percentage points over the 5-year period. And it's a huge drop when you think about Hollywood being at the forefront of the industry for so long. But zooming in on where we are today and this region, the appetite for local language storytelling has increased by 6.5 times since 2020. So we're going to zoom into that data point in a little more detail today. And before we do focus on Arabic content, we zoom out and we look at the global demand for non-English content. And this has been a recurring theme at some of our sessions over the past few years. And again, we've updated this chart into 2025. But over the last 8-year period, global demand for non-English content we see has almost doubled. There's been a slight correction this year, which was always going to come. And English content seems to have bounced back in terms of their share of overall global demand. But based on that trajectory and looking at the numbers and our projections, we definitely see a continued rise in other non-English demand in the future. Now, it is also important to note that the supply of non-English content demand is going to grow, and also accessibility for tools in terms of subbing and dubbing and now AI will make it much more easier from a distribution standpoint to monetize content internationally, and that's non-English content. So if we start to break out the pink segment on the previous slide and zoom in on what is driving that global demand for other non-English language, no surprise to see Hindi content, Chinese, Korean, Spanish and Japanese content making up the top 5. And just an important note to make about Hindi content, we're just looking at TV series here. So if we include film and Bollywood, I'm sure that share wouldn't have declined year on year. But another important note to make is that when you look at the market of India, Hindi content is no more the only gold standard. There's so many other languages coming out of India in terms of now playing their hand within the production space and telling their stories globally. But why are we here today? We're here because of that pink slither, and we're going to zoom into where Arabic content sits in and amongst the grand scheme of things and looking at its global potential for growth. So you start to map this out and look at those numbers in a bit more detail. And what we've done here is, across the entirety of all global demand, across all non-English language content, you see Arabic there contributing just under 0.7%. But then we've benchmarked the growth here to Spanish content, and this is essentially the opportunity for growth. There's a 4x opportunity for growth. Of course, you can benchmark to the likes of Korean and Chinese and Hindi content, but there is huge growth potential in this area, and we've seen this for a while. And when you start to look at the growth trajectory back to 2020, so we've indexed the volume of demand globally for Arabic content and also domestically, you can see that local growth for Arabic content has grown by 24 times since 2020, so a 5-year growth space. And for international growth for Arabic content, that's grown by 21x. So not only there's huge growth potential, but the acceleration of the way Arabic content is growing both domestically and internationally is pretty impressive. Okay, so Rasha teed up what we aim to achieve through this presentation in terms of testing the hypothesis. So before I hand over to her, I just wanted to introduce our supply side. So we talked the last 10 minutes about demand and the proprietary metric that we've built over the past 10 years, but demand can't exist without the supply of content. And what we've done on the supply side is we're now tracking over 100 million different metadata tags across 2,000 platforms, across talent, titles, film, TV, IP, and now sports as well. And when you zoom into the genre, essentially what we've built is the DNA of a TV show. And genres are very subjective, and it's really difficult to build a taxonomy in and around genres. But what we've also started to look at is every individual trait which a TV show, a film possesses. So from characters, languages, the subject, the settings, the plot, the creator, the showrunner, everything you see within this chart. But for the purpose of today, we're really drilling in on the genre and in particular the theme and the mood. So excited to hand over to Rasha and unveil more within this space.
I'm back. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the emotional need states, the question that was initially posed. So first, what we identified through the exercise that they did was the growing and consistent themes. And these are the top 8. And I'm going to take you through them. So again, I want to reiterate, and I'm going to probably say this again and again throughout the whole session, is that this is not a rigid categorization. Every story has multiple themes and moods. Every story can have multiple feelings that are associated with it. And of course, great stories have many themes and moods that come with it. So, but we just wanted to understand, step away a little bit from genre as much as possible. It's hard to do that, but to understand what they are actually wanting to feel from the content that they choose to watch. So these are the top 8, and we'll go through them in a second. So first, what we did was we created a DNA code, if you want. So this is how we created or identified the different themes, okay? So these are the keywords that were chosen, the code book, if you want, for each theme. And I'm gonna go through them really quickly, and you'll see they make sense for them to be the top 8. So if we look at the first one, which is horror and dark content, and this is, again, trying to step away from what we are, like what we always know about genre, just think about the feeling. So this is where the audiences step into like lean into the fear, look into the paranormal, look into that supernatural, go into that type of darkness. So this is the type of content that they look for. And this is one of the, the biggest engines that we have, and they travel really well. And then when we look at the second one, the second and third, so you have the coming of age and youth. So that is your early identity, the rite of passage. This is where everyone's first emotional pillar that they have. So this is, we're talking about high school, early rebellion, self-discovery, first loves, and friendship. So we're talking about this type of genre. And then when we talk about comedy and humor, I don't think this needs explanation, but basically this is the main way where people just want the moment of joy. They want to feel that happiness, that laughter, that's where they go to. So this is the feeling that they seek to have when they choose what they watch. And then the next themes You have drama and social issues. I know drama, we're used to thinking of it as a genre, but try to think of it as a mood, as an emotion. And so this is where, if you want stories, link up with reality. So it goes into the societal issues. We talk about mental health, discrimination. So this is where the type of stories that leave you thinking, that leave you wanting to talk about it and to discuss it. And then when we look at action superheroes, which feels like the opposite end, this is the escapism. This is where people want to believe in fantasy, they want to see a hero, and this is where they want to feel that, where they want to see like good overcome evil, and they just want to escape into that reality. And then you have crime and thriller, which is the intrigue, the investigation, the mystery, the where you're constantly asking questions, where you're suspenseful, you're at the edge of your seat. This is again a good engine. Everyone likes to watch it. And then you have, again, on the opposite side, where you have family and relationships, and this is something that is very popular in our region, where it talks about connection. So all of this is rooted in feeling that connection that you have with family, with friends, and just understanding love and romance. And then finally going into my favorite, to be honest. So feel good and redemption. And this is where our story, what we wanted to ask, where the story could be starting with crime and thriller and all of that, but as long as it has that emotional payoff at the end. And we wanted to understand, is this something that people want, that hope, that humanity, that feeling at the end of when they're done watching what they're watching, that sense of feeling good about what they watched. And the key words here, you'll see that they mean so much. So redemption, hope, healing, transformation. So this is where people come to watch, where they feel like they're learning something, they're transforming within watching it. So after we've gone through all of those, and we've seen how we can categorize each of them, we're going to see how they play out. So how do they travel? How are they demanded? Are they growing? How are they doing globally, and then later on regionally? So if we look at this based on demand and travelability, you'll see, no surprise, where you'll see like horror, crime and thriller, action, superheroes, drama and social kind of stories are very demanded and they travel really well. But based on the data that we've seen, we notice that feel-good redemption is on the rise. So you'll see that it is something that is being demanded more and more. I love seeing the cameras, but there's going to be a QR code where you can download. So there is a rise in this feel-good and redemption kind of arc, that emotional payoff that everyone is looking for. And it's proven here. So when we look at 2021, so when we look at 2021 and we index the growth rate of demand now, this is globally again, you'll see that they're all doing well. They're all increasing because these are the top 8. But you'll see that there's one that's increasing more than the other, and that's the feel-good and redemption. So it is true, in this world that we're living in, people want to leave with that good feeling at the end, where they felt that hope, where they felt that empowerment at the very end. So this confirms that the audience is looking for a hope-driven kind of content. When we look at it in the UAE, in the MENA, it tells a similar story. So these are the top 3 growing themes in the region. Okay, so number 1 was coming of age and youth. So these are, again, the early identity kind of stories that we were looking at. So this could be like Al-Rawabi School for Girls, Thanawiyat al-Nasim, Jamil Jiddan. So it could be all of these types of stories that talk about these early high school teen years. And then comedy and humor. Also, we've heard so many in the talks today talking about how comedy is making a comeback and how important it is. And feel good and redemption by 65%. So it is growing globally, and there is a trend that it's growing regionally as well. And what I like to see from all of these 3, when we look at the top 3, you'll see that there's a common theme, if you want, where it's positive. So, so they are more looking for some positive kind of content, where they're looking for that good emotional ending where they feel satisfied after watching it. So we're coming towards the end, but before that, we wanted to show you some examples of regional shows that we felt that fit into the category of feel-good and redemption. And again, I want to get away from thinking of genre itself. We want to think exactly about the feeling that it gives while you're watching it. So Catalog, for example, is a show that had a good end. It comes from a sad premise of him losing his wife, but it had a really good ending. And you can see how it traveled really well to China and Turkey, and its peak demand was at 20.3. So again, it could be a drama, it could be a crime, it could be anything, but as long as it gives that feeling of that feel good at the end, you'll see that it's actually doing really well. So this is the example of Catalog. And then for Finding Ala as well, you'll see that it really did well, especially regionally, but also in Europe, where it peaked demand at 2.36 as well. And then you have تحت الوصاية. And this is a tricky one, because if you think of this show, you won't think that this is completely a feel-good show, but it ended with this silent empowerment for the leading character. It came up with this nice ending where everything, you have some hope after the struggles that she had. Because again, feel good isn't just fluff. It's more about going through the struggle, but then succeeding after. It's that accomplishment. It's that sense of empowerment that you have after. So these are the three examples that we've come up with, and there are many more. But we would like to leave you with just a few words from us, okay? Just a little words of advice, if you'll allow us. So after looking at all of this, what we really want to reiterate, and this is something also that we've heard before, is that communicate with, make sure that you're tackling universal themes while making sure that you're very regionally relevant and that you're talking to the region, making sure you're very authentic. And also is that leads with emotion. So it's not just let's make a show that has this aspect and this aspect, but just think about the emotion that you want your audience to feel. So is it you want them to cry, you want them to laugh, you want them, it depends on what the type of feeling you want. And of course, as I mentioned before, a good story has all these different emotions. But just make sure you understand which ones are that you want to communicate, and just make sure that they're able to feel that. And then, of course, because we are research people, we really do believe that data is important. And I know that we've heard in the previous panel, it's the way you use data is important, because just to remember that art and science can work together really well. And this is something that we do at RISE. And another reason why I like working at RISE, because everything we do is very intentional and that we think about it. So thank you so much for having us.